this one, so I stitched on the front to make it a little easier to see. So the very first thing we're going to do before we do anything else is we need to make sure that all of our lines are erased. Now, depending on your method for tracing, your method for erasing is going to be different. I like to trace with a friction pen, and friction pens are heat erasable. So I'm going to use my hair dryer. I'm going to come up a little bit closer. Oh, bumpy, bumpy, there we go. And so you can see here, especially up in this flower and on the edges of some of these flowers, there are lines that we don't want to be able to see. So I'm going to set my hairdryer to hot, and we're going to hair dry. So with the lines erased, we're ready to flip our fabric back to the front side of the hoop and or straighten as needed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to determine if I hang from this point right here, is this going to hang level? And I'm actually a little bit off center here today, so I'm not going to be hanging level. So I'm going to show you how we're going to fix things. I tightened this with a screwdriver. Hold that thought. Okay, so we're going to loosen our hoop. And if you tightened it with a screwdriver, you might need to loosen it with a screwdriver. There we go. Loosen our hoop. Now, if your fabric feels pretty centered and you like how it's looking side to side, but the center is off, you can just loosen it, and then you should be able to get it to rotate a little bit if you loosen the hoop enough. So that's option one. For my friends who stitched on the back side of the hoop, like I typically do, you're going to take it all the way out. Then you're going to put it on top of the bottom hoop or inside hoop. You're going to fill with your fingers. You can pull it tight so you can see, am I centered? Is it looking good? And then we're going to put our outer hoop back on, making sure that we're finding the center line to line up our screw gate with, so that when we go to hang this up at the end, it's going to hang level, especially with this hoop because we have this nice horizontal visual line in here. We want to make sure it's going to hang square. So now I'm going to tighten my screw gate. I'm pretty happy with what is going on center wise. So I'm just going to finger tighten this. And then I'm going to check again, make sure nothing's terribly off. And now I'm going to tighten the fabric because you can see right here, I got these lumps and bumps. We don't want that, right? So I'm going to hold my hoop with one hand. The other hand, we're pulling down and away. And I'm just going to continue going around, pulling the fabric until it looks tight in the hoop. No bumps, nothing that is bothering me about that. And then I'm going to hold it by here, and I'm going to look back from step back here and see how this is hanging. See if this is going to hang centered or if I'm off still. I'm going to call this close enough. So, fabric's in my hoop, nice and tight. I'm going to give the screw gate another tighten real quick, just so it holds that fabric as tight as it can, so that we don't have to repeat this process later, which I've had to do with some hoops. Okay, next step, we're going to need scissors. Now, I realize most of you probably don't have fabric scissors like I do. So a nice pair of kitchen scissors or any sharp scissors. Sharp meaning they cut really well. That's what we want to cut fabric with. We're going to trim our fabric around the edge. We're going to cut about 1 inch to 1.5 inches away from the hoop. And this part right here, obviously on mine is shorter, so I'm not going to cut anything right here. And then when I can see that it's, again, about 1 inch to 1.5 inches away from the hoop, I will again cut fabric off. So I'm just going to keep going around the hoop, trimming. You don't need to be exact. We just want to have a nice clean cut. So make sure that you're allowing your scissors to do the work for you and you're not fighting with it. All right, that step done. All right, our next step is that we need to get this fabric tied behind so that it will stay out of the way and be finished all gathered together. So we're going to use a spare piece of thread from stitching, and I like to test and make sure that this thread's going to be long enough. So I'm going to lay it on my hoop here. I'm going to make a circle around. And if these threads overlap with enough for me to hold on to, then this thread is long enough. This is about as short as I would go. Typically, I would like another 3 or 4 inches, but this is the piece I have left over, so this is the one we're gonna use. I'm gonna thread my needle on one end real quick. And then I'm going to tie a knot on the other end. And this knot I want to be about 1.5 inches or so away from the end, because we're going to use this end to tie to the opposite end when we're finished. So we need something to hold on to. If we have a knot that's right here at the end, there's nothing to hold on to. So I've got a good section of thread to hold on to, and I made a double knot here just so it's a little bit bigger. And now I'm going to flip my hoop over because it's easier to hold. And we're going to make a running stitch all the way around the edge. So to make a running stitch, you go into the fabric, out of the fabric, into the fabric, out of the fabric. You can see it's making a dashed line there, if you will. And then we pull the thread through. Usually I make 2 or 3 stitches at a time, and I'm about 1/4 inch away from the edge of the fabric. Just continue going in and out of the fabric, stopping to pull your needle through every 2 or 3 stitches. We have finished going all the way around. And you can see my thread end here is a little bit short. So, like I said, a little bit longer if you can manage it for your thread. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this tight. So I'm going to make a square knot. So I'm going to take right side over left side and flip it under to make that first cross. And then I'm going to pull this as tight as I can get it. Really cinch it closed. And then we're going to reverse the process to make a square knot, right? We're going to go left over right this time. Pull that through. And I'm going to check and make sure this stayed mostly tight. Pull this closed. Tighten this knot as much as it will let me. And then I will usually add another couple pull throughs here on the top just to make sure that thread's not going anywhere. The thread can be kind of slippery, so I want to make sure that it's not going to come undone. Once that's all knotted, we're going to grab our scissors and trim these ends to a more reasonable length. You can see here from the front, it's looking great. I'm going to grab some string that we're going to thread through here to hang it. Now you could use leftover floss. I've used ribbon. I have used just a nail, even straight through here, hung it right on the screw gate. But my favorite way is with this twine. And the best way to do this, to make sure it's not going to want to twist, is to first tie your length of thread in just a simple knot here at the end. And then you're going to thread from the back to the front this loop you made at the bottom through. Then you pull the end through the loop, pull this up, and then it is ready to hang. And you are finished with your hoop. Some other good ways to finish a hoop if you don't want to finish it in the hoop. You could frame an embroidery. You could stretch it over a canvas and staple the sides. You could sew it into a pillow. You could iron it out and just hang it up as it is. I've made ones that I've folded over a stick, like a dowel rod, and hung it up that way. So lots of choices, but a simple way to finish it in your hoop that leaves you options to change in the future if you need. Thanks for stitching with me.